This is the Quiet File. Stories that history left behind.
In August of 1590, a ship reached a lonely island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. The people on board expected to find a small English settlement. Tired, maybe. Hungry. Desperate. But alive. Instead, they found something far stranger. The houses were gone. The people were gone. And carved into a wooden post was a single word. Croatoan. For more than 400 years, that word has been treated like a riddle, a warning, a curse. The final trace of a colony that vanished without a trace. But what if Croatoan was never the mystery? What if it was the answer? This is the Quiet File. In 1587, more than 100 English men, women and children crossed the Atlantic Ocean with a dream that was both dangerous and enormous. They were not simply explorers, they were settlers. Their goal was to build a permanent English colony in North America, a new beginning, a new claim. A small piece of England, planted on a distant shore. Their destination was connected to the Roanoke region, near the coast of what is now North Carolina. At the center of this story was John White. He was the governor of the colony. He was also a father. His daughter, Eleanor Dare, was among the settlers. So was her husband, Ananias Dare. And soon after the colonists arrived, Eleanor gave birth to a baby girl. Her name was Virginia Dare. She is often remembered as the first English child born in the Americas. For John White, this colony was not just a political mission. It was personal. His family was there. His granddaughter was there. His future was there. But from the beginning, Roanoke was not an easy place to survive. The colonists were far from England. They depended on supplies that had to cross the Atlantic. They were surrounded by unfamiliar land, unfamiliar weather, and complicated relationships with the native peoples already living in the region. Some local groups had helped earlier English visitors. Others had reason not to trust them. The English had already brought conflict, fear, and violence into the area. By the time White's group arrived, the land was not empty, and it was not peaceful. The colonists needed food, they needed tools, they needed support, and they needed time. But time was exactly what they did not have. Soon after the colony was established, John White returned to England to ask for supplies and help. It was supposed to be temporary. He expected to come back quickly. But history had other plans. England was moving toward war with Spain. Ships were needed for defense. Travel across the Atlantic became difficult, dangerous, and delayed. And so, John White did not return to Roanoke in a few months. He returned 3 years later. By then, everything had changed. In August of 1590, White finally reached the island. He was returning to his colony, to his daughter, to his son-in-law, to his granddaughter, to the people he had left behind. But when he arrived, there were no voices, no smoke rising from cooking fires, no children running between houses. No one waiting on the shore. The settlement was empty. The houses had been taken down or removed. There were no bodies, no clear signs of a battle, no message explaining what had happened. Only marks left behind. The letters C-R-O were carved into a tree, and on a post of the settlement's palisade there was a longer word: Croatoan. Before White had left years earlier, he had reportedly made an agreement with the colonists. If they had to leave Roanoke, they were supposed to leave a sign behind, and if they left because of danger, they were supposed to add a cross. But there was no cross. That detail matters, because to John White, Croatoan did not look like a curse. It did not look like a random message. It looked like a clue. Croatoan was the name associated with a nearby island and with native people in the region. Today, that area is often connected with Hatteras Island. To White, the carved word may have meant that the colonists had gone there, not vanished, not been taken by ghosts, not disappeared into the woods without reason. Moved, relocated, survived.
At least, that was the possibility he needed to investigate. But he never got the chance. Bad weather and difficult conditions prevented White from following the clue properly. He could not reach the place the word seemed to point toward, and eventually he was forced to leave. He returned to England without answers. And the people of Roanoke passed into legend. Over time, the story changed. It became darker, stranger, more dramatic. A whole colony vanished. A single word remained. No one knew why. And that version of the story was powerful. It was easy to remember, easy to repeat, easy to turn into a ghost story. But the real story may be less supernatural and more human. The first theory is the one most people know, that the colonists died. Maybe they starved. Maybe disease spread through the settlement. Maybe conflict broke out with native groups in the area. Maybe the colony was attacked, and whatever remained was lost to time. This theory is possible. Roanoke was isolated. The colonists were vulnerable. Food was not guaranteed, and relations in the region were already fragile. But there is a problem. When John White returned, he did not describe a scene of obvious destruction. He did not find bodies. He did not find a clear battlefield. He did not find the warning sign he had expected if the colonists had left under direct threat. The second theory is that the colonists split apart. Maybe some went inland. Maybe some went toward the coast. Maybe they divided into smaller groups to find food, shelter, and protection. This would make sense for people trying to survive. A large, starving group is difficult to support. A smaller group can move more quietly. It can ask for help. It can join others. It can disappear from the written record without disappearing from the world. The third theory is the most compelling. That many of the colonists went to Croatoan. That the word carved into the post was not a mystery at all. It was a destination, a message for John White, a quiet note left in wood. We went there. This theory does not solve every detail. It does not tell us exactly who survived,
It does not tell us where every person went. It does not give us a clean ending, with names, dates, and graves. But it does something important. It turns the story away from magic and towards survival. Because if the colonists went to Croatoan, then Roanoke was not a story about people who disappeared into thin air. It was a story about people who were abandoned by distance, politics, war, and time. People who waited for help that did not come. People who had to make a choice: stay and risk dying, or leave and try to live. In that light, Croatoan feels different. Not frightening, not cursed, almost practical. A message carved by people who still believed someone might come looking. And someone did. John White came back. He saw the word. He understood what it might mean. But the ocean, the weather, and the limits of his expedition kept him from following it. That is the quiet tragedy of Roanoke. The clue may have been there. The answer may have been written clearly, but the person who needed to follow it could not. In later years, stories and reports suggested that English people may have been seen living among native communities. Some accounts spoke of European objects. Some spoke of people with English features. Some spoke of traces that seemed to point towards survival, rather than sudden destruction. Modern researchers have continued to look for evidence. Some have focused on Hatteras Island. Others have looked inland. Archaeologists and historians have debated artifacts, maps, settlement sites, and old accounts. None of it has created a perfect final answer. But together, these clues support a possibility that feels stronger than the legend. The lost colony may not have been lost in the way people imagine. It may have been absorbed, scattered, folded into other communities. Its people may have survived, married, moved, changed names, changed languages, and disappeared into the living history of the land. That kind of ending is harder to turn into a ghost story, but it may be closer to the truth. Because history is not always a locked room with a body inside. Sometimes history is a door left open, a path into the trees, a word carved into wood, and a group of people doing the only thing they could do: walking away.
So what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? The honest answer is that we still do not know every detail. We do not know where every person went. We do not know who survived. We do not know exactly how the story ended. But the strongest answer may also be the simplest one. They did not vanish. They left. And the word Croatoan was not the beginning of the mystery. It was the direction of the answer. Maybe Roanoke was never a ghost story. Maybe it was a survival story. Not a colony that vanished into thin air, but a colony that walked away, followed the only clue they left behind, and disappeared into history. Some stories don't scream, they whisper. File closed.